I thought about waiting till tomorrow to talk about some of this stuff, but there's so much going on right now with the remaining like few puzzle pieces with silly season and drivers and whatnot, that now we got some reports about some charters potentially being sold, and that's like the tipping point. That's like, here's the bucket's full, you get it to the edge right before it's about to tip. Yeah, we're to that tipping point of the bucket. So yes, there's been reports, rumors, so much going on. There's a few seats available in the remaining Cup Series field for 2024. It's still not 100% sure what's going to happen with the 10 car. Is Eric Almirola going to return? Is he going to retire? That's a potential open seat. The 31 is still technically open. I'm not sure who's going to be in it, but there's some things going on with, I don't know. I'll explain it later in this video. And then we've got, what else we have? We have an open Spire car, and that is leading to some more wild rumors and reports that I'm going to talk about here. Well, let's get straight to it, shall we? Let's go to the real spicy one first. So this is from our favorite person, Adam Stern. Team Live Fast has declined comment on NASCAR industry chatter that it could sell its charter soon, with Spire Motorsports seen as among the suitors. Among options Spire would have with the charter is helping a team like Trackhouse if it needed a spot for Zane Smith in 2024. There's a lot to unpack there. Number one is that Live Fast Motorsport could be potentially selling their charter. Live Fast Motorsport has been in the Cup Series full-time for a couple of years now. I think this is year 2 or 3. The team is co-owned by BJ McLeod and I believe Matt Tifft, former driver, and of course BJ McLeod drives the car for a majority of the schedule. Now, this team is a backmarker. They do not have a lot of competitive runs. They've gotten a couple of top 10s in the Cup Series at Daytona, maybe at Talladega and Atlanta. I think only Daytona, though. But that's where BJ McLeod's best finishes have come as a driver and also as an owner. So this team, not that competitive, lacking funding and all that, but still, they keep it clean on track. Not a lot of crashes, not a lot of wrecks. But we see this team every single week because they are a charter team. For those who don't know, a charter guarantees you a spot every single week. There are 36 of them. If you have a charter, as I said, you're guaranteed a spot every single week, but you also have to compete every single week. You cannot select, like if for Live Fast, for example, they couldn't say, oh, we only have a chance at the super speedways to run well. Let's only run the 2 Talladega races, the 2 Daytona races, and the 2 Atlanta races, and never race the rest of the season or pick random races for them. When you have a charter, you have to race every single race in order to maintain that charter. So, Live Fast has to run every single week. Well, they are thinking about selling their charter, and selling charters has become a thing more recently, and it has really blown up in terms of price more recently. We saw 2311 Racing obtain their first ever charter for the 23 car from Germain Racing back in the fall of 2020. And then eventually, we saw 2311 Racing full-time in 2021. Then we saw Trackhouse Racing buy out Chip Ganassi Racing by the charters, because the original charter for Trackhouse that they had in 2021 was on lease from someone else, maybe Spire, and they had to buy charters to run full-time in the future. So they just bought out all of Chip Ganassi Racing, got 2 charters, have 2 full-time cars. Since that point, the price of charters, it was a few $1 million. As of a few months ago, there was a report that they are north of $25–30 million. It is $30 million for a piece of paper. Okay, not really. The piece of paper has a lot of importance, because the charter, as I said, gets you into the field each and every week. Well, Team Live Fast, well, once again, they did decline to comment. It seems like there is talk that they could potentially sell their charter to another team, and Spire could be that team. Spire Motorsports, of course, currently has 2 charters. One of those is filled by the number 7 car, driven by Corey LaJoie, who just signed a multi-year extension, so he is not going anywhere. That car is not going anywhere. And of course, Spire has recently come into some funding. Gainbridge has recently joined on as a sponsor, is helping fund that team. So they are trying to improve themselves to become at first a mid-pack team and then eventually a top contender. And honestly, with Corey LaJoie, they've achieved that. They've had a lot of top 20 finishes this year. LaJoie has been running really well this season. The other car's a different story. Ty Dillon's in that 77 car. That car is also a charter team. And yeah, that car exists. But there are rumors, there are reports that Ty Dillon is going to be replaced by Carson Hocevar, who is currently in the Truck Series, who races for Nice Motorsports, a Chevrolet team. Spire is also a Chevrolet team. So if Hocevar were to join in the 77 car, how could he do? He and Corey LaJoie, that's a solid driver lineup. We've seen Hocevar the last couple of weeks in the Cup Series in the 42 car. He's done well. So, this could be a great test for him. How can he do? Anyways, that is not the point of this video. We are here to talk about this next part. Among options Spire would have with the charter is helping a team like Trackhouse if it needed a spot for Zane Smith in 2024. So essentially, Spire wants to buy a third charter, but they don't have the funding for it. They cannot use said third charter. So the point of buying this third charter would be to lease it out to another team. Well, Trackhouse is that other team. Trackhouse Racing, of course, we now know is a top Cup Series contender. We saw Ross Chastain finish second in the points last year, pick up 2 wins last year. He also picked up a win this year. We've seen his teammate Daniel Suarez pick up a win in his career, made the playoffs last year, missed it this year. And then we've seen that Project 91 car, a third team that runs part-time for international drivers. We've seen 2 drivers, Kimi Räikkönen and Shane Van Gisbergen. SVG won in his Cup Series debut and is himself looking for a ride in the Cup Series or just NASCAR in general. Well, it's been a while since we talked about him, actually, but Trackhouse has wanted to expand. But the fact of the matter is these charters are very expensive, and this isn't something that you can just, oh yeah, we'll buy it and we'll figure it out later. Like, you got to figure out your financial situation now, plan down the road. How are you going to get this car funded? Like, this is not a light change. This is not a light addition. This is not like adding an extra room to the building. This is, this is a pretty big commitment here. And on top of the charter, you have to buy the charter. You have to make sure there's room for a third Cup Series team. You have to pay a third Cup Series team, a pit crew, engineers, mechanics, crew chiefs, car chiefs, all this stuff. And then, of course, you have to pay a driver as well. Well, with Spire being a Chevy team, Trackhouse being a Chevy team, I'm sure they could work out a deal. But it seems like there is potential that Spire buys the Live Fast, who is also a Chevy team, actually. They buy the Live Fast charter. So now Spire has taken that piece of paper and given let's call it $25 million to Team Live Fast. And now they have this piece of paper. They essentially have a third Cup Series team if they want it. But they also have the option to lease it out. And they can lease it out to Trackhouse. And Trackhouse is talking to Zane Smith. There's a report that came out just a couple days ago. I was going to talk about this later or that day or the next day. But then there was a radio interview with Zane Smith that said he's already knocked out his Cup Series deal. Or not Cup Series. He's knocked out a deal for 2024, whether it's Xfinity or Cup, that he's already got it locked in. He signed it. They're just waiting to announce it. We don't know what it is. Zane Smith is a top prospect right now. He's been driving for Front Row Motorsports in the Truck Series for a couple years now. He's had a lot of success there. He's won a championship, tons of races. So naturally, the next step is to get out of the Truck Series. But he hasn't done that yet, but he has expressed that he does not want to stay in the Truck Series much longer because the natural progression is to leave the Truck Series for either the Xfinity Series or the Cup Series. Well, Zane Smith has reached that point. He wants out of the Truck Series, and he wants to go elsewhere. Front Row Motorsports made their decision a month ago. Michael McDowell and Todd Gilliland would be in their Cup Series cars for 2024, which means Zane Smith, we love you, but you can go somewhere else. Do something else. Do whatever you need to do to make yourself happy, to build yourself a career. So Zane Smith now has that option. I always thought that he was going to go to SHR, Stewart-Haas Racing. That's a Ford team. Zane Smith has driven Fords. It would make sense for him to go to that team. He's a top prospect right now. Everyone seems really high on him, and he's shown the on-track success. But maybe not. There was a report earlier this week that Zane Smith has been talking to Trackhouse. And Zane Smith, actually, if you remember, he almost became a Chevy driver in the Cup Series a couple of years ago, right before Chip Ganassi Racing sold to Trackhouse. Zane Smith was almost in, I think, the one car or something. He was going to replace Kurt Busch, who was leaving for 2311. Zane Smith was almost a Chip Ganassi Racing Cup Series driver right before the whole sell to Trackhouse happened. Zane Smith, that would be full circle, going from about to sign a deal or had a signed deal with Chip Ganassi Racing in the Cup Series. Then all of a sudden they sell to Trackhouse. Then you're in the Truck Series with Front Row Motorsports. You're running a couple Cup Series races with Front Row Motorsports. Now you're a free agent again, and now you're maybe signing with Trackhouse? That is a full circle. Wow, mind-blowing. Anyways, the reports, the rumors, everything is ramped up about Zane Smith ever since that came out, that he was talking to Trackhouse. But the reason he isn't, or maybe he has, as I said, he's signed a deal. We just don't know what the deal is and who it's with, honestly. But the fact of the matter is, Trackhouse doesn't have a place for him. Right now, as of today, with only reports, if the true hard facts are Trackhouse Racing does not have a spot for Zane Smith as of today. They have 2 charters. They have 2 drivers in those cars signed up to multi-year deals. They don't have space for him. That's the fact of the matter as of right now, September 13th, 7:43 p.m. Right now, Zane Smith, there's no room for him. They would have to either buy a charter or lease a charter. Well, if this report is true that Team Live Fast could potentially sell their charter and Spire could purchase that charter off of them and then lease it to Trackhouse, that's a spot for Zane Smith at Trackhouse. And that's a huge, huge opportunity for him to be in a competitive Cup Series team, to potentially go out and, compete for wins early in his career, to go out and potentially compete for a playoff spot early in his career. That's a huge opportunity for him. That's a huge step for him. It's a huge deal for him. There's no other way of putting it. Once again, these are only reports, but the fact of the matter is that, Zane Smith, if he wants to go to Trackhouse, this is how it has to go down, essentially. That or Trackhouse just has to buy the charter themselves. But it's a win for almost every party, I would feel like, in this situation. Team Live Fast, they need the funding, but the fact of the matter is, the quickest way to get it is to sell your charter. You sell your charter, you get in the tens of millions, and that's something that they could use. Sure, they might have to run a year or 2 as an open car. Would they want to do that? I don't know. You're not guaranteed in the field every week. So, the Daytona 500, that's the biggest payout. You'd have to go into that race as an open car, and Live Fast hasn't had the raw speed to qualify in on pace. They would have to probably fight for their spot in the duel. Well, then, the rest of the races, we rarely see over 40 cars in other races unless there's like a new track or something like Chicago. I think we saw 40. But the fact of the matter is, after Daytona, you're going to be in every race because, not every week we have over 40 cars. So Team Live Fast, if they were to sell their charters, they'd have to, if they want to continue to run in the Cup Series, they could either run part-time or they could, run full-time with an open slot, meaning that there's a potential that they don't make the cut every week. But the reality is they would make the cut almost every week. Just the Daytona 500, as I said, would probably be the one exception. Well, that's their situation. Now we move to Spire. What is their situation? They have a 3rd charter. Good for them, but they can't really use it because they don't have the funding. Yes, as I said, they got a new sponsor, and, that's great for the funding and all, but they probably want to focus on their 2 teams they already have before expanding to a 3rd team. So what do you do with this 3rd charter? You can't just let it sit there. That's a waste of money. That's a waste of time. That's a waste of everything. But if you lease this charter out to a 3rd team Trackhouse, they're paying you for the charter that you just bought. And if they use this charter for 3 years and, you could come out ahead financially in this thing. Let's say you buy the charter for $30 million. Well, if you lease it out for $11 million a year, you're up $3 million. That sounds like a win. And you don't have to pay for any of the cars that get wrecked. That sounds like an absolute win if you're Spire. Now, once again, I don't know how much charters get leased for. I don't know how much it would get sold for. That's just a hypothetical situation. But I don't see I mean, there's potential loss in this situation for Spire, but, you know, at the same time, if you're leasing out this charter that you just dropped, let's call it $30 million once again on, and you're getting some of that return without having to put a car on track, without having to wreck a bunch of cars or, you know, have a bunch of part failures, without having to even pay a team to put a car together, that kind of sounds like a win. Like, you know, if they can't get Hocevar in that 77 this year, why don't they just, I mean, I'm just kidding. Obviously, they want to run a team there, but, you know, sounds like a win. And then as for Trackhouse, they get, the win for Trackhouse is they get the guy they want, Zane Smith, in that car full time. And then the win for Zane Smith is that A, he's in the Cup Series, B, he's in a Cup Series competitive team. Like, these are 3 teams, different teams, 3 potential wins. I think this could work out. Once again, it's only a report, but that's the potential situation, is that Team Live Fast sells their piece of paper worth $30 million, let's call it, to Spire. Spire takes said $30 million piece of paper and says, here you go, Trackhouse, but it's still ours. You have to pay us a fee, and then we want it back at some point, or we could just sell it to you. Down the road, you know, we can negotiate, something like that. But as for Zane Smith, where will he end up? I don't know. You know, as I said, Stuart Haas, could that be an option? Could this whole Trackhouse deal end up working? What about Colleague? Colleague Racing, what are they up to? We don't know who's going to be in the 16 car as of today. AJ Allmendinger said 2024 he's going to be at Colleague, but it's just a matter of it's going to be Xfinity or Cup. I don't know what AJ Allmendinger wants, so I don't know. As for the 31 car, they have been teasing who is going to be in that car for weeks now, ever since Justin Haley announced he would be leaving for Rick Ware Racing. Today, Colleague Racing talked about who they may potentially have in their car. They announced on Twitter, or Chris Rice, who's the president of Colleague Racing, I think, he said Friday, and then posted a picture of him shaking someone's hand. And then Colleague Racing, they said that they would have an announcement Friday at 1:45 p.m. Eastern. So now, like, everyone's, like, freaking out. Like, what does this mean? Who's driving the 31 next year? And then it gets freaky. NASCAR social media, leave it to NASCAR social media, breaking down people's arm hair and wrist shape and hand shape. We have reached that point. If a NASCAR driver ever becomes like an FBI most wanted, you just give any hints to NASCAR social media, they will figure it out for you. I kid you not. This picture of handshake, like I can't shake my own hand. The picture of the handshake, someone found a picture of Daniel Hemrick on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, something else, and they pointed out an exact spot of this super tiny mole on his arm and said it's the exact spot as the handshake arm. And they're like, Daniel Hemrick to the 31. Blows my mind how people figure this out. Now, obviously, they never said in their announcement thing that this is a Cup Series announcement. This could very well be Daniel Hemrick signing an extension in the Xfinity Series. I don't know. That would be quite the troll, though, to do that. But I feel like, you know, Chris Rice has said that in the next couple of weeks, he said this last week, in the next couple of weeks, we want to announce who's in the 31 car. We know who it is. We have the deal done. We're just waiting to announce it. And it's going to be a surprise to some of you. What does that mean? Like, what does that mean? When I think of a surprise, like 31, the candidates for the 31, a surprise to me would be Zane Smith, who we just talked about. What if that's happening? What if Zane Smith is a surprise and he's going to the 31? Noah Gragson. What if that happens? That would be a surprise to me. Straight out of reinstatement the same week. And Chris Rice did say they were waiting on one more piece of the puzzle, something like that, to be solved before they could announce this deal. What if the reinstatement was that one piece of the puzzle? Daniel Hemrick moving back to Cup. That would surprise me a little bit. There's so many question marks with the 31 car. It's not even confirmed that in the Cup Series ride's getting announced this weekend. But there's rumors, speculation, as I said. But wow, this video went on a long time. But yes, in conclusion, NASCAR social media kind of creepy, like breaking down people's arm hairs. I'm going to put my arms down before you guys start like breaking down my arm and stuff. Next up, Daniel Hemrick, maybe. No, what? Okay, now I'm confusing myself. 31 cars still open. And then we have potential charter sell from Team Live Fast over here, selling to Team Spire, who could lease to Trackhouse. And then Zane Smith to Trackhouse. So much put my arms down. So much going on in the world of NASCAR. It seems like we'll get some of these questions answered pretty soon, but I thought I'd update you on the rumors, reports, and all of that. There's so much going on right now. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a great rest of your night. I know it's a late video, but, you know, I thought it'd be fun to talk about.